Hello, my name is Kai, and I am a bit of a rambler. I like to travel, learn, and tell stories. I went to the Gembira Loka Zoo in Jogja. I might not end up going to that giant Hindu temple here. I'm still looking into it, but there's so many cool things in the city, and I'm relaxing, all cool. Haven't been exercising as much or I hadn't been. Once I went on this long hike, that's why I did it. It was 8 kilometers walking to the zoo and 8 kilometers back, or 5 miles there, 5 miles back to walk to the Gembira Loka Zoo. And it was a nice walk. And when I got there, there were like 10 different school trips going on also. So it must be the place where you take the Jogja elementary school kids. And I was left alone for, I don't know, 4 minutes. And then they all swarmed and spoke surprisingly good English and started talking to me. And there was probably like 5 or 6 kids at first. And then there were 15. And then there's like 30 kids around me. I'm sitting on a curb waiting for the Gembira Loka Zoo to open, which opens at 8:30, not 8 like I thought. And all these kids are doing the same. So they just come over and say hello and their teachers start taking a video of their students talking to me. And it was really fun. I was reminded of my students, back in China. And yeah, it was nostalgic and fun in the moment also. And I asked them a bunch of questions. At first I was just like, so what's your name? How old are you? Blah, blah. And then I realized that a couple of them could just talk, could just speak English conversationally with me without much issue. There might have been a couple, processing moments in their brain, but they were not having, a couple of them at least, were really advanced conversational English speakers. And they were 10, maybe? I would say 10 at the oldest. So very impressive and a lot of fun. And I just started talking about them, why they were there, if they've been to the zoo before, and just all sorts of whatever was going on. Just asked them how it was going. Good food, of course. I'm always talking about food. I showed them a bunch of pictures from the Hawaii trip, and they were almost impressed enough for the seal and the turtle. I don't know if they knew what the turtle was, but a lot of them seemed pretty confused by the seal. But they must have, one of them knew the Indonesian name for it. But I don't know if that's a very common, if there are a lot of seals in the Southeast Asian seas because it's so hot here. But that was a lot of fun. And we passed the time talking, and then the gates open and everyone said goodbye, and all the kids went in to the zoo. And I went in and luckily can use my card to buy the zoo ticket, which is not expensive. It's just ever since I got a credit card, like I'm always getting all the rewards now. And yes, I feel kind of dumb for not doing this for the past decade, but it's so inexpensive to travel that I was like, so what if I get 5% back on whatever the heck? But now that I'm getting 5% back, yeah, I get it. It's pretty fun to rack up the points, especially if it's for Airbnb, which I use to live in all of the year and I spend the most money on. It makes sense to get a month of that money back or whatever. So I bought my little ticket, which includes a catamaran ride, and you can ride the trains all around the zoo because it's pretty big. And I hopped in there, and there was a whole bunch of the kids in there in front of me, and I went the opposite way so I wouldn't be walking with 8 schools of kids the entire way. And I didn't know how long I was going to be there. My plan was just to go and see the Komodo dragon and then leave. But when I got there, there was a guy sweeping the side of the road, and I asked him, hey, is there a Komodo dragon here? And there's not, which upset. Nah, that's not true. I definitely was not upset. I was just like, oh well. That's what I was like. I was like a little bit bummed that there was no Komodo dragon at this zoo. But I know what they look like. It's fine. I think I've even seen one in a zoo before. I've probably seen one in Thailand. So they must have one at the reptile house in Thailand. And I went inside, so I knew there wasn't a Komodo. I almost just left because I was like, well, that was the whole reason I'm coming here. But I was already there, and why not go see a cheetah? So I went in, and the petting zoo, they have a big petting zoo right in the beginning. There's turtles and like huge Galapagos tortoises and goats and chickens, which was funny. And what else? Alpacas. They had all sorts of animals in the petting zoo, like a lot. That's what kind of clued me in that this zoo might be more spectacular than I had given it credit for. Because downtown Jogja is pretty metro city busy. Like, it's too busy. I don't go into the city, basically, is what I'm saying. But the zoo is not dirty, and it's not moving too fast, and it's not cramped at all. The downtown city of Jogja feels very cramped to me. Like they're just building stuff, and so the streets are getting smaller because they keep developing, or like new shops keep opening more like. But the Gembira Loka Zoo felt very wide open and space, and what was really interesting to me was I haven't been to a zoo in a few years because generally they're very depressing. Like, I do not like watching captive animals at all, but I especially don't like seeing them clearly uncomfortable in a cramped space. And you'll see that when they like walk a little, like 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, or like when they look so depressed that you can tell they're animal expressions that they're depressed. They're just really sluggish moving, or maybe they're tranquilized. Like, there's a lot of reasons I stay away from zoos in general. But I was already there, so I went in, and the petting zoo, all of these animals were very active, and they seemed curious about the humans coming to see them, and they didn't seem upset or skittish or anything. They just seemed like tame, wild animals. And that was interesting, because usually petting zoo animals don't like to be touched in a lot of zoos that I've been to. And these guys, I don't know, the animals just seemed so healthy and carefree at this zoo. And that trend continued the whole time, and I'll talk about that. But it started in the petting zoo, where I noticed how healthy all of the animals looked, how clean the alpaca's fur was. There was one freshly shorn, and they were chewing very calmly and relaxed. And it was just a nice little petting zoo. So the kids got to touch all these little animals, and I did too. I got to pet a goat. And these two, there's like a group of 3 10-year-old girls who asked to take my picture. I think I've been asked to take a picture with people more times in this country than in any other country. Certainly by frequency over the number of days I've been here, but it might just be total. Like, all the time I was in China, I was asked a few times, like I was asked several times with like friends or people who happened to be at a dinner, but they didn't say like, it wasn't clear that they were like, a foreigner, take a picture. It was more like, we're all in a group, let's take a picture. But in Indonesia, it's very clear. It's like, holy crap, a foreigner. We never see one of those. Can I take a picture with you? Like, that's what they're doing here. I've been asked that here more than any other country. Certainly by frequency versus duration, but I think overall as well, over the entire 6 and whatever years in China versus the 1 month here in Indonesia. Every few days, if I talk to anyone for any amount of time, usually, or not usually, but very often, they'll ask for a picture, which is fun because it doesn't happen very often, and they're so nice here. The people are so nice, and they're not like, oh no, sorry, that picture wasn't any good. They take a picture and then they're like, cool, thanks. So what's going on? They're just so chill here, and there's so many English speakers, so I don't get like in China, I might get someone like shouting at me in Chinese and then just pulling out the camera and taking it. But here they'll calmly ask in English, can I photo? And I'll be like, oh yeah, sure, that's okay. And we'll take one photo and it's fine. So yeah, it doesn't feel, I'm like the animals in the petting zoo. It feels very comfortable for the attention paid to me relative to the attention paid to me in other countries for being a foreigner. And that extends to everything, restaurants and everything. These people are chill. I like Indonesia a lot. So, the zoo. I took a picture with these 3 girls who were very nice and said thank you, and then they went on their way, and I went on my way to the Oh, you know what? There were these two ponies that were nibbling each other's shoulders. So let's test that against, were they grooming each other, or is that a nervous habit that ponies have? But ponies are super nervous anyway. Let's see. Yeah, okay, that says that's a sign of affection, trust, and like bonding, basically. So that's good. Another stress-free sign that the animals in that zoo were healthy. They really did seem. This was, I think, of any zoo I've been to my whole life, the animal seemed the most comfortable and active, especially. They seemed the most comfortable that I can remember. There's no doubt in my mind these were the most active animals I have ever seen in a zoo. I am wondering, maybe it's because I was there so early, but by the time I got to a lot of them, it was like 9, 10, 11 in the morning. I stayed there 3 hours altogether because the animals were fascinating to watch, and they had a lot of animals. And it was fun just to see these little dwarf ponies nibble each other's shoulders. It was weird to watch, so I watched them for a while. But after the horses, I saw the aquarium, and they had like 6-foot catfish in the aquarium. Giant, giant catfish and other fish that I didn't recognize that were a totally different shape, but also 6 feet plus. One of them looked like it was like 12 feet, but it never got so close. It was just this insane giant in the middle of all these other giant fish. That was pretty crazy. That was pretty crazy to see. I kind of could not believe that. And then I started walking in the direction I thought was the correct way, but was the opposite way of everyone else. And I was like, well, that's fine, because then you'll go by yourself mostly. And there's a big T-Rex mouth that led into a tunnel. So that was fun. I took that, very Clifford. And I ended up at the hippo. And I said hello to the hippo. Actually, the hippo might have been before the giant T-Rex mouth. But the hippo was out of the water, gnawing on a giant wooden post. So maybe brushing its teeth. That's how it brushed its teeth. But it was fully out of the water, all pink and giant and terrifying with its huge mouth open, scraping against the post. And yeah, I was able to see that was the most active hippo I've ever seen in any zoo ever. And he was out on land, like standing up. It was crazy to see. And I've always heard about how aggressive they are, but when I saw its freaking open mouth, which is almost as tall as I am, because the top of its mouth has got to be over 2 feet. And then the bottom is like 2 feet plus. So its open mouth opens to like 5 feet wide. It's so crazy to see that. I didn't understand it when I saw it in the beginning. I was like, what the heck is that thing? And then I realized that was just a hippo with its mouth open, scraping its teeth on this wooden post. And then I thought of like the aggression that I always hear about and their prevalence in Africa, and how someone must feel if you see an animal with a mouth as big as you are running at you aggressively, and you know, like, oh, that's the most aggressive animal in Africa that kills more people than any other. And its mouth is as big as yours. That's so crazy. And dude, he was watching me for sure. He wasn't like pissed off, and he's far away and there were high walls, so that was good, because there weren't high walls with the tiger, which I don't understand still. But his eye was so clearly like just tracking me and watching me. And when I looked away, he like paid a little less attention, but as soon as I looked directly at him, his eye was like locked on to my eyes. So it was really fun to see that dude. That was pretty crazy to see. After him, there was the wallabies. I don't know if they were full kangaroos. There were larger ones, and I know kangaroos are smaller than a lot of people think, and maybe some wallabies get bigger. So I'm not sure if there were also a couple kangaroos, but there was a ton of wallabies bouncing around a few feet high in the cages, or in their pen. Everyone was in an open pen, a large, nice open pen with like climbing equipment for the primates and plenty of trees and stuff for the birds. Oh, there's an open area bird like cage, so you could walk around in the bird cage, and there were a bunch of peacocks in there, and there were a bunch of baby peacocks crossing the path that you're supposed to walk on. It was a lot of fun, and the The peacock seemed pretty chill considering there's a big, weird, hairless monkey. Well, not hairless. Monkey walking around in their habitat. And then I saw a tapir. Is that how you say it? Tapir? Tapir? A tapir, I guess. Tapir? Tapir? Tapir sounds correct. Tapir. Taper. I'll say a taper, and I'm American. I'm American. A taper, those almost pig-looking, long, prehensile nose. It's like a half pig, half elephant kind of thing. Looks super weird. It looks like a prehistoric animal, except it's real and it's in some zoos. And it was in this one. I was excited to see it because they always look so weird. And then they had a whole bunch of emus, and the emus were tall. They were like 7 feet tall, probably 8 feet tall. The big one. There was one big one. He was eyeing me for that. Sure, he was, and he had the bony crest on his head, and he was just staring me down. It was really cool to see them. Because there weren't a couple. There were like 12 emus walking, running around. And this super loud, the only loud thing in the zoo that really sucked, there was this really loud golf cart by, I don't know, workers. And they stopped right next to the emu pen, they're like the skittishest animals ever. Oh, and they have giant clawed feet, so watch out. And they did it for so long that the emu started getting agitated, and one charged at a guard that was just sweeping up grass and like smoothing out grass for the emu. And he didn't freak out or move or anything. He just lifted his rake, teeth forward, toward the emu as it ran at him and didn't move. And the emu stopped its wings were flared out, and it was kind of like shaking its head and stuff. And he just stood there with his rake, and it stopped, but it was still flaring its wings, and then it chilled out, stared him down for a little while, and then turned away and walked away. But that, giant loud golf cart seems, just replace it with all the nice quiet golf carts I saw there also. But they were big and fast and crazy looking, and their crests, and all these animals, they looked super clean and very healthy, and like they're all walking around and eating or pecking at each other. And actually none of them were pecking at each other, but they were pecking at the ground. It was so weird to see there were ostriches and emus, I think, because I remember the ostrich heads looked different, and they had super long necks, and they were lowering their crazy weird long necks all the way down to the ground. And then when they picked their head back up, it would just like, it looked like the head was moving independently. Like it wasn't even connected to the neck, and the neck was just following along. What weird giant animals that I got to see. Yeah, and they all looked very healthy, so it was a lot of fun. After those big birds, I went to, deer. They had a bunch of deer there, and just all the cattle, all the ungulates, and they had some water buffalo that had bonkers horns, like giant horns. Not as big as the guy I saw in Thailand. That was insane. Like one of his horns was 6 foot. Each horn was 6 foot. These were like 4-foot horns, which are still pretty crazy big. And they all had them. Like there were 5 or 6, and there's like 5 of them in one area, and then there was one that was clearly more aggressive than the others with horns in the other area. But it's pretty crazy to see their giant horns. That's when I got to go through the dinosaur tunnel. So I went through the dinosaur tunnel. There were some primates, and I was like, whatever. And I went over to the big cats because I was pretty much done. I was like, okay, that was a lot of zoo. There's probably like a lion and then nothing. And I was totally wrong. There was 80% more of the zoo. The zoo is large and big, and it has plenty of area for lots and lots of animals. So there were servals, those like large cats. What's the other one called? One of them's spotted and one of them's not spotted. One is a serval, Serval, and the other was something, whatever. I don't know. But it was really cool to see them because they were walking around, jumping, like pacing in front of the window. The serval was the only one that was like pacing, and I was like, does he have enough space? But he had a ton of space. I think maybe he was just pacing because he was like, if this breaks, I'm going to eat you. And he was just staring at me. And they're not as big as a leopard, but they're 3 times the size of a house cat. So they are intimidating. But then I got to go to the leopard, and that was pretty crazy to see. He was ripping his claws into the trunk of a scratching post that they had and just ripping it to hell. And then he bounded toward the glass and like looked at me and then went over to the water and started drinking the water, and some kids came over and he walked away like to the back of the pen and then bolted straight at them and stopped before the glass and just stared. And one of the moms kept pulling their kids back. Oh, before the kids got there, I got to see it eating grass. It dismissed me pretty quickly. And it just ate grass, like just like house cats do. This leopard, after it drank its water, it was munching on the grass to have a salad for its fiber or whatever. I don't think there's any consensus on why cats do that. But all these cats were so cool. And then I saw what looked like a monster from Final Fantasy. I recognized it kind of, but I was like, it's not a bear. It's not a, and then I went over to the plaque and it's a sun bear, which I have seen before, but this one, I don't know, this one struck me more. Maybe because this one was so clean and again, active. All of these animals were moving around like a lot. And the sun bear, he has this big, like, golden patch in the shape of a waxing moon on his chest. And it's awesome to look at because they're super clean and glossy coat. And his claws, they look like sloth claws. And they're as big as that in proportion to his body. They're huge. They're like 6-inch giant curved, scythe curved claws. And but he wasn't moving around. He seemed in movement more like a sloth than a bear also. Although it was clear he was faster. He was fast because he scratched his head and moved around a couple times. But he scratched his head with these giant claws. And I was like, dang, his skin must be so tough, because if I scratched my head like that, I wouldn't have a head with those claws. And he noticed, he was looking at me, and I got a pretty cool picture of him just staring at me with both giant claws on a rock and him up on his hands, like shoulders hunched, just looking at me. And he looked so weird. His skin's a little more smoothly tapered than a regular black bear or brown bear. Just a weird looking sloth bear hybrid animal, but very clean, very active and curious. And I got to see a hyena, big spotted hyena. Oh, I got to see a whole bunch of otters nesting with each other, just taking a little nap. There's like 8 of them in a little otter ball. And then I went to the lion, actually. I saw the lion first. The lion was behind a fake bamboo plastic barricade. It was high-ish. It was 10 feet high, but I mean, if the lion just ran at it, he would bust straight through it. I think he didn't because maybe it was like an African, what's the kudzu? Is that the spiked bamboo thing they have in Africa that animals don't like? It looked not exactly like bamboo, but it looked like maybe a spiked bamboo, so the animals knew not to walk past it. But still, I mean, if he got excited and ran through it, people would be in trouble, because that lion was big. His mouth eats kids. His head is as big as most people's bodies. He was a giant animal, and there was just a thin piece of plastic, really. There was a thin plastic barricade between him and eating people. I didn't see a piece of glass. I just saw this bamboo wall with like spaces in between it. And there's the lion. And then you could see him from the side too, where there were glass. But no, that's definitely not. Yeah, there's no glass. There's just like the kudzu looking barricade. That was thin. I'm looking at this now, and they're like almost a foot apart from each other. So he can't squeeze through, but he could easily crash through that. That's pretty crazy. He didn't. He was just chilling. He was looking around and he seemed interested, but not angry or anything. And then the hyena was running all around his area, and he would come up and look at the kids and be like, yum, and then run away and run back and look, just like the that cool cheetah did. And when I went to see the cheetah again, or spotted leopard, I don't know what the difference is between cheetah and a leopard. There was a family coming, and right before they came, the leopard was right in front of me, and then he walked over and jumped up like 8 feet into a tree and climbed up onto a branch and sat down. He didn't sit down. He was sitting on his haunches, but his shoulders were up and he was like looking around. And he did that right before, just a few seconds before family arrived. They were like looking around, and I can't understand the Indonesian that well, but I could tell the dad was telling him like, oh, I guess we can't see him. Okay, let's go on. And I was like, no, wait, here, right here, look. And I pointed, and I like motioned him over to where I was, and I showed him. And if you were looking at it from the right angle, you could see the entire profile of the leopard, like looking around, sitting up in that tree branch. And the dad was really excited and called over to his son and picked him up so he could see, and said thank you, and it was really cool. And I love showing things to people. So after that, I started showing, like when I was at an exhibit and a kid was like looking and then started walking away, if he didn't see it, I'd be like, look, right here. And that happened again. I'll talk about it in a minute. There were elephants, and they looked super healthy, except for this one that looked dangerous because he was tied up. And I didn't know if maybe that's just why he looked dangerous, but the canal surrounding the elephants, like the moat surrounding the elephants so they don't walk out of their area into the public area, seemed tiny. Like, again, I am so happy that these animals have enough space, but it seems like they have so much space they can get out. And I was like, is that why they tied up that big elephant? Because he looked like he could basically step over the moat. And the moat was not deep either, so if they didn't step over it, they could just step into the moat and then keep walking out. But I guess they don't want to because none of them did. And there was a feeding area, and I walked by because there was a bunch of kids and their parents, and I was like, man, I'm not gonna feed the elephants. I get it, whatever. I did that when I was 6, and my initial thought, like, I want to do it, but like, I gotta wait in line, and actually feeding the elephants cost like twice as much as the ticket itself. It was a separate thing. And I walked away and I was like, wait, you dumb idiot. It's still cheap as anything. It's like $6. And they give you a basket of fresh vegetables and fruit to feed the elephants. It looks like a lot of fun. And I thought, who am I to stop myself? And so I went over and I bought a ticket to feed the elephants, and I got my little basket, and they took a picture of me, and they printed out for free, and that's your souvenir. And I looked stupid because I didn't know what was happening, so my arms, I looked like Anne of Green Gables holding a little basket of flowers. And then I waited in line, and then I fed the elephants, and I fed them really fast, and one of them was aggressive, and one of them was more chill, and so I made sure that you got equal food. But the aggressive one, like, by the end, not aggressive like angry, just like he was more pushy getting the food. And as I gave them out, he kept like pushing his trunk at me more. And he, on the last one, I had 2 more carrots, and I gave one to the pushy one, and then I was going to give the last one to the not pushy one, the chill one. And the pushy one like tried to snake his trunk. Even though he was still holding the carrot, he tried to snake over his trunk to grab the second carrot also. And I was like, hey. And I fed the second one to the chill elephant. That was really fun. It was really fun feeding the elephants. They just plucked there was all different fruits too. They had corn and carrots and not tomatoes. They had a lime. No, it wasn't a lime. It was a guava. They had a guava. There's a whole bunch of fruits and vegetables. And the animals just plucked them out and then threw them, like chucked them with their trunk underhand into their gullet. And it was really fun to do. And I had a lot of fun doing that. And I'm very glad I did it. And I got a cool sticker that I put on my laptop from the Gembira Loka Zoo as another little gift they give to people who pay a bunch of money to feed elephants. It was fun. A bunch of money relative to the country. It was $6 or whatever. But that was a very fun time. It was totally worth it. I got to pet the trunks and everything. Yeah, it was great. I was right next to elephants, and they were cool. Elephants are cool. Did anyone ever tell you that elephants are cool? There were big old warthogs, the ones with the giant warthog faces, but these were all juvenile, so they weren't in full crazy warthog mode yet. The Java warthogs. Those are the ones, if you look like wild boars or whatever, and there's one that just looks like his whole face is just a mess of giant warts and it's huge. That's the Java warthog, where I was on the island of Java. That's where the Gembira Loka Zoo is located. But I didn't see any of the ones with the giant crazy wart faces, just other crazy looking big warthogs, just not giant and nut. What else were there? There was some iguanas, some big lizards I didn't recognize, a whole bunch of cool snakes, really brightly colored. That's, again, like everything looked so healthy. The scales on these snakes were like shimmering. This is the cleanest, healthiest zoo I've ever been to. I'm so impressed by this Gembira Loka Zoo. Maybe I came right after they did a cleaning or something, but it looked amazing. And then there were caimans, and that was really cool. They're like little crocodiles, still like 5 foot long, but they just look like tiny crocodiles. And the first one I saw, I was like, what is that? And there was a turtle. His head was facing the opposite way, and he was like, I'm king of the world, Titanic pose, looking over the caiman's tail, and the caiman was just silent and chilling out and not moving or anything. The other way. It was really funny to see the two of them facing different directions, and the turtle was just surfing this caiman. That was great. And then there was another couple caiman areas where there were multiple caimans in one habitat, and one of them I didn't see until I was within like 6 feet of it, and it was super close. It was within like 3 feet of the viewing glass, and I was like, where's the caiman? I was like, oh, there's one. It's lying in the water. And then I looked to my left, which is much closer to where I was, and I was like, whoa, because it was like, 6 feet from me, and then I walked a couple steps, and it's very close. And it was statue still. Its pupils didn't move. It just stayed there, just staring at whatever it was staring at, not moving. And that was the other time I got to point out an animal, because it was pretty crazy how close it was, and it was in the sun. Like there was a ray of sun shining directly on it, but because of its color and its slightly irregular shape, it was very difficult to see, just in shallow pools, not deep enough at all, and it was standing on the land too, over a log, and still you wouldn't notice it. It's perfectly camouflaged, but it's so close to the glass. So this little kid walked over with his family, and he looked for a while and couldn't see anything, and then he looked at the one in the water and was like, water. And I was like, hello, Dicini, over here. And I pointed at the one that was right next to me was way closer. The one in the lake was pretty close, but you couldn't see its head and you couldn't see its whole body. This one was standing out, like displaying himself. So I pointed out to the kid, and the kid looked where I was pointing, and then he looked back at me confused, like, there's nothing there. T-Doc. And I was like, no, like here, right here. And I pointed from a couple different directions, like with both hands, and he like zeroed in on where I was pointing. And then he visibly recoiled. He was like, whoa, when he realized there was a crocodile on land a few feet from him. And then he ran over, and his mom went with him, and she didn't see it, I don't think. Because when she got over, he was staring. She was talking to him like, hey, what are you looking at? And then she looked a few times where he was looking. And then on the third time, she also like recoiled and was like, whoa, because it's right there in front of you. This giant, and she pulled him back a little bit too. It was really funny. But that was really fun, pointing out the crazy statue caiman. There weren't too many others. I went, there was a monkey house that was cool. There were some lemurs, some small primates. All the big primates were in their houses, so they weren't out in the sun, which makes sense. It was hot. And I saw some more aquatic stuff. What else did I see? Oh, it was like 10 a.m. by that point, or 10:30, 11? Because I didn't start back until 11. So it was probably close to 11. So I'd already been there over 2 hours. And that's when the speedboats will start up. So they have a catamaran, which is like a big slow boat that you can take across the river if you don't want to walk. But I just walked across everything or around the entire zoo. And then if you want, you can pay extra to get a speedboat ride around the lake / giant river running through the middle of the zoo. That was kind of cool. The zoo is divided by this giant river that goes through the whole city and through the zoo. So if you want, you can get a speedboat ride, and it looked pretty fun. There was a couple ladies having a fun time in a speedboat ride. But things were starting to build up, and there were more and more people, so I was really glad I went early in the day because, yeah, I was alone for the whole first half of it mostly. Like, there weren't a lot of other people. And, yeah, the animals were really active. It was a great time. It was really fun. And I headed back, and I walked on back. And I just want to state again how clean the areas were. And when I was there, everybody, they must do it in the morning. They must do it in the evening too, because when I got there, or maybe they just arrived super early, because there were people cleaning the cages when I was walking around, like the guy cleaning the emu cage I mentioned. I saw a few people cleaning stuff, and even the landscaping of the zoo outside of the pens and cages were very carefully maintained. It was a lot of fun being there. I felt very good looking at these animals. I didn't see any, maybe the monkeys, or the primates could have been, the larger primates, because they were in the house. But I don't think I saw any animals that seemed like they were, at the least, like in any way neglected or unhealthy or unhappy. They all were active and extremely clean and social with the other animals in their pen. And yeah, just having it, they looked good. And I'm very sensitive to that. I don't like I said, going to zoos much. So this was a really nice zoo to go to. I hope I'm not jinxing anything by saying this, but I recommend this zoo. It seemed like a very nice area for the animals and huge places to walk. Like, the avenues to walk around are large. The pens for the animals are large. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And the food they were giving the animals seemed very fresh. Like, the fruits and vegetables I gave to the elephants were stuff I would eat. It was as fresh as fruits and vegetables, as produce I've ever seen. And the emus, the ostriches had fresh feed. What other food did I see? Maybe that's it. But it all looked fresh. Even the grass that was cut to give to the elephants was clearly freshly cut grass. So it was great. It was great visit. It was a lot of fun. Got to feed elephants. Got to talk to some kids that were excited to speak to the foreigner and get some of my having students fix in. That I still am like, man, I liked being a teacher. Yeah, if you're ever in Yogyakarta, stop by the Gembira Loka Zoo. It's $3 for admission, and everyone's cool, and all the animals are healthy, and there's a big petting zoo, and it's a lot of fun. I hope this was fun to listen to. I hope you're having a great day. I am. You can talk to me at bitofarambler@gmail.com or bitofarambler on Lemmy and Blue Sky, and I will talk to you soon.